Hi, morning everyone. Welcome to the Knitting Expat Podcast. My name is Mina and I'll be your host today. Welcome. Today is Monday, the 13th of July, and I'm coming to you from where I live in Bahrain. So if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. And if you're a new viewer, welcome. Thank you so much for giving me a go and taking some time out of your day to watch, basically. Just a little quick introduction if you are new to the podcast. My name is Mina. I'm from the UK originally. Sorry, I should have grabbed some water before I started. So I'm from the UK originally, and I live in Bahrain in the Middle East with my husband and our 2 cats. And here we go. Where you can find me. You can find me on Instagram as Mina Phillip, on Ravelry as Mina86. And you can join the Ravelry group, which is the Knitting Expat Podcast, and you can find show notes for this episode and all other episodes on the knittingexpat.wordpress.com blog. I make project bags as well, which I sell on Etsy under Mina Makes, and all of those are linked down below in the description box on YouTube, and they're all linked in the Ravelry thread for this episode as well, and in the show notes, so they're linked everywhere. I just wanted to quickly say, I realised this morning actually that the Ravelry group has gone over 500 members, and I'm just absolutely gobsmacked. When did that happen? Ooh, that's one of the cats. Derek, sort of wandering around. So thank you to everyone who's joined the group and who's taken part in the chatter threads and been chatting away and stuff. It's been great having you, and I've gotten to know so many wonderful people through this whole podcasting thing that it's pretty incredible. I've actually fallen a little bit behind with Ravelry. I've managed to keep up with the group and replying to everyone's messages, even if it's a little bit delayed, but I have fallen a bit behind on the other groups and stuff that I am members of, and my Ravelry projects page is way behind. It needs to be updated. It's just last couple of weeks been a bit hectic and just haven't had time to take finished object pictures and stuff like that, so I'm hoping to get all of that sorted this week. So just basically wanted to say thank you to everyone who has sent me messages and left comments on the threads and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure I've gotten back to everybody by now, but I do try really hard to make sure I reply to everyone within a relatively short space of time. But apologies if it has been a little bit delayed recently, just been a bit hectic. So the outline for this week's episode, I'm going to talk about some FOs, some works in progress and upcoming plans, knit along updates, some Mina Makes project bags, information stuff, not a lot really. Very small section on acquisitions. Going to do the Q&A and then the week in review. And sorry if you hear some rustling and stuff in the background. That's Hugo playing with some tissue paper in his box. Come on. Alright, I think he's stopped now. Right, so finished objects. I do have a finished object to show you this week. It's a pair of socks. But actually I can't show them to you because I don't have them anymore. So if you followed me on Instagram, you'll have seen that I finished a pair of Serdar Heart and Soul vanilla socks, cuff down, fish lips, kiss heel, and I did them so the stripes went in opposite directions. Sorry, he just ran off. And I was knitting those for a friend of mine, Steph, I showed you last week. I was making them for her. I stayed with her wherever I go to Dubai. She always puts me up, and I made socks for her kids last time when I was in Dubai, and I wanted to make her a pair of socks. The reason I don't have them is I've already sent them off to her. Perry was in Dubai yesterday for work, and I'll come to that a bit later, but I gave him the socks to take with him in case he had a chance to swing past the house and drop them off for her. He did, but it was quite late at night, so he just left them hanging on the door handle on the front door. And so she picked them up this morning. She sent me a message saying that they fit, so that's great. I'm really excited by that. And she's already hinted that she wants more socks, so we will see. But I can show you the yarn. This is some of the yarn that I had left over. So you can see it was a sort of a darker fuchsia pink, a lighter pink, a sort of light blue, and then this sort of purple colour. So it's a 4-colour stripe, and they're quite wide stripes, and as it turned out, I knit it cuff down, and I knit until the end of a stripe, and I started the Fish Lips Kiss heel at the beginning of a new stripe, and it worked out really well. The entire Fish Lips Kiss heel was, one stripe was almost enough to do the entire Fish Lips Kiss heel. Only the last 2 rows of the heel started in the new stripe colour, and actually when you look at the pictures, and I'll put the Instagram photo here in a minute for you to see, it looks like the heel is just in a separate colour, and because they striped in the opposite way, the heels are different colours. But I really like how they turned out, and I'll insert a picture here for you to have a look. So I'm really, really happy that they fit her and that she loves them, so yay. So that's my finished object for this week. Not one that I can physically show you, but there we go. Moving on to works in progress. I have quite a few to show you this week, and quite a lot to say for most of them. So I'm not going to show you my Cozy Memories blanket this week. I'm going to save that one for next week. I think what I'll do is I'll probably show that every other week. Gives me some time to do some work on it. I know some weeks I probably won't work on it at all, other weeks I'll want to work on it more. But that is fine, because that is a long-term project, and I'm trying to get used to that idea and be okay with it. It's not really in my nature to have a lot of stuff on the needles for a very long time, but I'm starting to be okay with that. I am trying to be okay with that, because I want to enjoy the process. I don't want it to just be about finishing things quickly, although I do like finishing things quickly, and I don't think that's a bad thing. There are just some things that are nice to take time with. So the first thing is in one of my Mina Makes project bags, and this, if you don't recognise already, is the Rock Island shawl that I'm knitting, designed by Jared Flood. If I find there we go. Should have prepared a bit better for this. So that's the Rock Island shawl. Beautiful. It's probably the first lace shawl that I'd favorited on Ravelry, and this is where I'm at. Not that you can tell that it's any different, but I did knit a few more rows on it. I literally, pretty much every stitch marker I own, and not every stitch marker, but the majority of the stitch markers that I own are currently sat on this shawl. You start to see it a bit better now, actually, the lace pattern. So we'll get that to, there you go. See where we're at. So I'll show you on here to give you a better idea. So I'm currently knitting this sort of lacy portion up here. And it's not a difficult lace pattern, it really isn't. It is a short repeat, but there are 17 of them. 17 of these short repeats on each side, hence why there's all the ridiculous number of stitch markers, and it is lace weight. So it's the reason why I've got all these stitch markers. I mean, it's a 6 stitch repeat, but the reason why I'm putting stitch markers between each one is I don't like ripping back. I really don't like ripping back my work. I feel like it's a bit of a waste of time having done all that knitting only to have to rip it out and do it again. I don't like doing things repeatedly unnecessarily. I just realised I've been showing you the back the whole time. Not that you could tell. It's effectively a garter stitch. There's no purling in this shawl. But yeah, so I put the stitch markers in, one, because I don't like ripping back, and two, this is my first time knitting with lace weight. It's double-sided lace, so you're doing patterning stitches. There's no rest rows on either side So you're doing pattern stuff, you're doing something on either side, and I don't want to have to rip back in lace. Lace is horrible to rip back in. Being able to make sure you pick up all the stitches again or tinking back is just not something I want to have to deal with. And just by putting stitch markers between every repeat, it might look ridiculous, but I've not had to tink back or rip back once, so it works. And I'm knitting this in Drops lace, which is a blend of baby alpaca and mulberry silk, and this is in the olive colorway. And one of my lavender sachets in here, so my bag and my project smells like lavender, which is not a bad thing. And these are being knit on my Knit Pro Symphony needles. These are the 4mm. I've got the interchangeables. And what else did I want to tell you about this? I have about 10 rows of the lace pattern left, and then it straight garter stitch decreases to the end. So I'm hoping to have this finished soon. Although the lace is a little bit hard on my hands, I'm not sure that wooden needles was necessarily the best choice for these, because the yarn does tend to stick and it does take a bit of work to move the stitches along. But yeah, I'm not about to change it now. I think once I get through the lace, the rest will be fine. So yeah, it's an interesting experience knitting with lace and lace weight yarn. It's the first time I've done it, and I think probably next time I'll use metal needles just for the more slick sort of movement of the stitches. Next, and that was also my entry for the Opposites knit along that's being run by Pink Hair Girl and the Pink Hair Girl podcast and the Yarn Women podcast. They're running an Opposites knit along at the moment, where you knit something either designed by someone from the opposite side of the world, in yarn that's from the opposite side of the world, or by in a way that is opposite to how you normally knit whatever it is you're knitting. So the pattern is by Jared Flood, who's an American designer, so that's on the opposite side of the world to me, and the shawl is being knit from the bottom up, which is completely opposite to how I've ever knit a shawl before. I've always knit the shawl top down or on a bias, so I've never knit a shawl bottom up. So opposite in two ways for me. And it's also my entry in the Suburban Stitcher Around Your Neck knit along. So she's got the Around Your Neck cowl at the moment as well. Next up, in another one of my Mina Makes project bags, is my dad's raglan. I finally started this last time I showed it to you, and I've made quite a bit of progress on it. And I'll show you, there we go. So the little blue marker was where I was last time. That's how much I've knit. I finished separating for the sleeves. I knit, I think I've done about 5 or 6 inches, no more than that. I've done a decent chunk, 8 inches I think on the body. I'll be knitting it to about 16.5 inches, and then I'll be starting the ribbing for 3 inches at the bottom. And so this is being knit in Drops Big Merino. So I'm trying to grab one of the balls with a tag. Drops Big Merino. And this, I believe, is in colour number 3, it says on here, but I believe on the website it's Aranthosite. It begins with an A, I can never pronounce it. But it's a really nice, soft, squishy yarn. It's worsted weight, being knit on my 4mm high sharps. I have everything on cable needles at the moment, so the sleeves are being held on cable needles rather than, I just find it's quicker to pick up when you want to knit the sleeves and trying to fiddle around with a bit of string. And I put half the stitches on a second cable needle because I wanted to measure and see what size I was getting. So at the moment this is coming out as about somewhere between 41 and 42 inches around the chest, which is a bit small for my dad. My dad's about 44 inches around the chest. But my history with knitting garments out of superwash yarn has shown that that they tend to grow by a couple of inches once they're washed, especially if I wash them in the machine, which considering this is going to be machine washed going forward, I'm going to block it by washing it in the machine, and I'm hoping it will stretch. Crossing my fingers. My swatch, I'm not sure how much my swatch actually grew after I washed it. I washed it by hand, and my swatch is not massive, but I find when people say that their gauge swatch lies when they're knitting garments, and I found that as well. Like I find that that after I've knit a garment, when I did my brother's sweater, for example, the gauge swatch gave me a completely different gauge than I actually got at the end after I finished the sweater. And I think what it is just purely the weight and size of the sweater compared to your swatch. Like this is going to be a pretty heavy sweater by the time it's done. It'll probably be around 1 kilo or heavier. So I'm thinking the sheer weight of this is just going to stretch it out a bit more. And this does stretch quite a bit, so I'm not too worried. I'm hoping it'll fit him and he'll like it. If he doesn't, well then my mum gets an oversized sweater. So I also went in and picked up and knit the collar already, because I don't know if you remember from last week, but it looked really gaping and really wide, and I was getting a bit concerned that it was going to be too big, or that it wasn't going to look right. So I thought I'd just go in, pick up, knit the collar. So all my bits hanging out. I'm sorry for the needles clanging. I thought I'd go in and knit the collar just to make sure that I was going to be happy with how it looks. And I think it's turned out pretty well actually. And I think once it's been blocked and it lays flat, I did a twisted 1x1 rib, or a 1x1 twisted rib, which I really like the look of that. I think it looks really nice. So, and the pattern that I'm using for this, it's not so much a pattern, it's a recipe that Susan B. Anderson did for Spud and Chloe. They had like a sweater knit along a while back now, and I used it when I knit my very first sweater, and I really like the recipe. And it's really simple actually. Once you get past the initial, I think there's like maybe 2 little maths formulas that you need to do, and once you get past those, it's hang on, sorry, I've got a needle poking through here. So once you get past those and you've done those, then the rest is just really simple plain knitting. So let's pop this back in the bag. So yeah, that's my dad's raglan. I'm hoping that will be ready. I know it'll be ready for his birthday in September, so that'll be good. So yeah, with that one, I'm counting on the superwash stretch. Yay! It's hoping. Alright, next up is a project that I hadn't been planning on knitting anytime soon, but after a comment by Perry a couple weeks ago, I decided that I was going to knit it. And so this is another one of my Mina Make bags. This is the medium size bag. And so I was knitting on my dad's raglan a couple weeks ago. I know I told you this last week, but and he commented on how much he liked the yarn. He was like, "Oh, this is really nice. Like, I like the color, and it's really soft." He's quite sensitive to like softness of yarn. And he was like, "Oh, I'd like if you made me a cowl out of that." And I was just like, "Where has this come from? Like, you don't like knitting stuff, like you don't wear knitting," not because he doesn't like it, but just because he doesn't feel the cold as much as other people, and generally he doesn't like things around his neck either, and he doesn't really wear hats. He says they look funny on him, and so yeah, he doesn't generally wear that much knitting. Even before we knew, even before I started knitting, in the winter time back in the UK or whatever, he rarely wore a scarf. Like, he had a scarf that he'd throw around his neck, but he rarely used it very often. He didn't wear a hat. He had leather gloves, and so it's just, he was not much of a knitwear person ever. So he just had by saying he'd like me to make him a cowl. I was just like, out of that yarn, I was like, all right, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And so I decided to do the and he even asked for a matching hat. Shock horror. So yeah, so he asked me to make him. I'm gonna make him for him because he doesn't ask me to knit him stuff generally ever. So I decided to make him the handbrake cowl. I figured he only asked for was something really simple and really plain, and I showed him the picture of the handbrake cowl and he said that'd be fine. I asked him if he wanted a ribbed cuff or a garter stitch cuff, and once I showed him the difference of what is what, he decided he preferred the garter stitch, and so that's what I'm doing. And so this is in the same Drops Big Merino. I actually started this yesterday afternoon, and I'm probably already over halfway through. He also asked for it to be a double loop cowl, so you can wrap it twice around his neck. Again, I've never seen him wear a cowl ever. I was quite surprised when he asked for one, but if that's what he wants, that's what he's gonna get. I'm more than happy to make it for him, and that's how it's looking so far. I really like how it looks. The stitch definition is really nice in this yarn, and like I said, he wanted something simple and plain. He didn't want it to be too sort of like in your face or anything, which is fine. I know that's not his style, so that'd be nice and squishy. But to make this, I did have to steal yarn from my dad's sweater, because I had bought enough yarn for my dad's. I bought enough yarn to make my dad's sweater, maybe had 1 or 2 balls extra for swatching and just in case. But so far I've gone through 2 balls to do this, and I've taken 2 more out to do the rest of the cowl. So what might happen is I'm probably gonna get to a point on my dad's sweater where I'm just not gonna be able to knit anymore because I've run out of yarn. And so what I'll do then is I'll either order more yarn from Love Knitting and have it sent here, or depending on when this ends up happening, I might wait, because Perry's going to be back in London in August. I might wait and have him pick some up for me. I mean, order some to my parents and bring it, and he'll bring it back for me, and then I'll still have time to finish it before we go to London in September, before I see my dad in September for his birthday. So I haven't quite figured that out yet. I know my Love Knitting order last time got here really quickly, so I'm not too worried about waiting a little bit before I decide. I want to see how far I can get and then figure it out from there. And I totally forgot to mention, my dad's sweater is my entry for Danny's Purposeful Stash Along. She's running a Purposeful Stash Along in her group, which is for basically stash yarn that you've got that you had bought specifically for a project, but you just didn't get around to doing it, and you needed some encouragement to get on with it. And so I'd bought this yarn ages ago now. I picked it up in May when I was back in London, and I'd been meaning to cast on my dad's jumper ever since. I even swatched for it whilst I was still in London, and had intended on casting it on since the beginning of May. So I finally got around to it. I know that doesn't sound like a very long time to wait to start something. Like, I guess some people have stash yarns that they bought for a sweater or a cardigan or something that are years old, but I've only been knitting since March of last year, so 3 months is a relatively long amount of time to wait to start something from when you bought the yarn, when you compare it to the fact that I've only been knitting for 15-16 months maybe. So I think it kind of counts. I don't really have anything older than that. So yes, that's for that one. And this one, my handbrake cowl, the double loop one, is going to be my entry for a bunch of knit-alongs actually. There's the Brit-along by the Bakery Bears, which my finished object socks are also an entry for, where the Bakery Bears are doing a knit-along, a Brit-along knit-along, where you knit a pattern designed by a British designer with yarn, with British yarn, and this was designed by Dan and Kay Jones, so of course this counts as part of the Brit-along entries, as one of my Brit-along entries rather. And this is being knit on 4.5mm needles. These aren't particularly special needles, these were just some ones that I got off Amazon with like a metal cable. They do the job. And just in case you don't know what the pattern looks like, which I'm sure you do, that's the handbrake cowl. Excuse the weird green lines, my printer it's gone a bit funny. And my last work in progress that I'm going to show you today is in my freckled whimsy bag. I love this bag so much. I love the cats. And this is a new pair of socks. This is what they currently look like. And I know Kay always says this on the Bakery Vets podcast, that she always ends up showing her socks upside down. I do the same thing. I always naturally go to show them this way, but it actually makes more sense to show them this way because this is the cuff and that's the top. So this is the next pair of socks that I've cast on. Ooh. There we go. Have a look at that. Oh, there you can see it better there. So I won I think it was the May month 12 Socks in 2015 prize draw in the Caffeinated Knitting group, and I won a pattern of my choice from Sarah Stevens, and I chose her 2-lane Highway Rage socks pattern, which I really liked, and I'd had it favorited in my favorites for a while. And I decided it's a toe-up pattern, but I'm obviously knitting it cuff down. So I'm doing the same 4 pattern rows, but it's basically going the opposite way, which I think looks perfectly fine. I really like how this is looking. This is being knit on my 2.5 Addies. Don't know what kind they are. What are they? Lace needles. I picked these up when I was in Iceland last year. So they're the lace needles by Addie. And I'll show you the socks. Those are the socks, the 2-lane Highway Rage. As I said, they are designed to be toe up, but I'm currently preferring to knit cuff down these days. I find I'm getting a better fit with my socks, so sticking with it for now. And I'm knitting that in Stroll Fingering Everglade Heather, and I was gifted 2 balls of this yarn by Maria of the Stitched in Sweden podcast when we did our swap earlier this year. So, and as soon as I saw the colours, I knew exactly who I was knitting these socks for, and therefore one of my friends back in the UK. One of my goals this year is to knit a pair of socks for each of. There's a group of us, a group of my girlfriends and I who are really close, and I went away with them in May when I was back in the UK. We went away to the Cotswolds for a weekend and stuff, and it was really nice. And I took I drew out everyone's feet and stuff. Most of them actually have very similar sized feet, so it should be fine. I mean, and I want to knit them all each a pair of socks by the time I go back in November, end of November. So that's my plan. And so this is pair number 1 out of, I think, 6 that I have to make for, so there's one for everyone. And so yeah, so that's my last work in progress. It's what was I going to say? And I'll probably enter that into a couple of sock knit alongs that are going on. There's always a sock knit along going on somewhere. So yeah, those are all my works in progress. I'm hoping to get a couple of things off the needles before I cast on anything else. I realise I have 4 things on the needles now. I'm not counting the Cozy Memories blanket because that is a long-term project, and I do just pick that up every now and again and knit a couple of squares, and or take it in the car with me and stuff if Perry's driving. So whilst it is a work in progress, I'm not going to count it as part of my sort of actual works in progress sort of thing. And I did a little tally the other day. I sort of just had a thought. I was like, well, I wonder, and everyone keeps talking about, so I'm just leaning over here to check something. Everyone keeps talking about Stash Dash and all of this and that, and at the moment I didn't really think about entering earlier, but I was going through and I was tallying up all the projects that I'd finished from the start date to see where I was at the moment. And my current total, I think I'm currently around 6,000 meters, roughly. And I was like, okay, well, I've already surpassed the first 2 totals, the 3,000, the 5,000 meter knitted or yarny related goals. And so the only one left that I could actually go for, which is still going to be a challenge will be the 10,000 meters. And I figured it out. If I how much I'd have to knit by the 14th of August, which I think is the deadline for Stash Dash to actually be able to enter. So it'll be interesting. I'm not overly concerned whether or not I will be able to enter for the 10k or not, but I don't think I'm even going to enter officially. It's just more of a personal challenge to see what I can do. I realised I had a lot of finished objects in May and not as many in June, but also I was travelling a lot in May and I did a lot more sewing in June. So I had a lot more travel, because I was traveling so much. I had a lot more time to knit because I wasn't doing all of the usual everyday things that I do when I'm at home. And in June I did a lot more a lot more sewing because I launched my Mina Makes Etsy shop, so there's a lot more going on with that. So I'm hoping to get a bit more of a balance this month. I'm not going to be traveling as much for the next couple of months anyway, so sorry. Upcoming project plans. I have a shawl design that I'm starting to finalize. I keep flicking around from one idea to another and keep trying to incorporate too many ideas into one design, as it were. So I'm trying to narrow it down and simplify it. I just want to keep it simple for this one. So I have an idea and I just need to flesh it out a bit more and then cast that on. I'm not sure when it'll be ready for release or when it'll be done for, but I'm hoping around autumn time. And then I still want to cast on the Viajante. I still don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Viajante or Viajante, which is the pattern by Martina Bemp, which I talked about a few episodes ago, which I'm going to use my Woolmice lace yarn, which was the yarn designed, that the pattern was designed with anyway. And Viajante means traveller in Portuguese, which I think is appropriate because I'm planning on using it when I travel. So I really want to get that cast on too, because I know it'll be one of those ones, once I get past the first little bit, it's just going to be straight stockinette knitting for a long time, which I'm going to enjoy because it's going to be good TV knitting. And I kind of, other than socks, I need just a plain knit project. The jumper, the sweater I'm doing for my dad, the raglan, that's going to come to an end pretty soon. I think once I finish the body, I'm probably going to be close to running out of yarn. I may be able to get part of a sleeve done, but once I get to a stopping point on that, I'm going to have to put that one aside for a bit until I figure out what I'm going to do, if I'm going to order more yarn to come here or if I'm going to wait for Perry to go back. And then socks, I'm just going to be knitting lots of socks, which is fine because I am on a proper sock knitting kick right now. If you told me I could knit on anything other than socks for the next 6 months, I'd probably be fine with that. I am resisting the urge to cast on all the socks, if for no other reason other than I only have 3 sets of sock needles that I actually like to use. I have one 2.25mm needle, which is my, I think, Knitter's Pride or Knit Pro Symphony. I have a 2.5 of the same type, and then I have my 2.5 Addies. I do have a 2mm Addies, but I don't like knitting that tight a gauge, it hurts my hands too much. And I have a couple of other 2.5mm circulars, but they're too short to do 2 at a time. So unless I did them 2 individually but knit them concurrently, I'm not sure I'd want to use those needles. So basically I'd be limited to 3 socks at a time, 3 socks on the needles at any one time anyway, which probably isn't a bad thing. So it does like mean I just can't cast on everything all the time, which is good, I guess. So that's what I've got planned for upcoming: a shawl design, the Viajante, and some more socks. Right, so next up is knit along news. So the Sunrays Cal is ongoing. There are people starting up. I believe some people have just received their yarns recently, so I'm hoping to see more finished projects soon and more people posting in the chatter thread showing their progress. So, and if you're posting on Instagram, make sure you hashtag it with Sunrays KAL or Sunrays Cal, so I can have a look and see what you guys are up to. and that's running until the 23rd of August at the moment. I may extend that. It depends how many people actually are able to finish in time and stuff, so I may extend that a little bit. We'll see how that goes, because there aren't too many entries, which I wasn't expecting a lot of entries for this one because it is a pattern specific knit along. So, but there are some pretty awesome prizes, and you can check out the chatter thread and the finished objects thread for more details on those. And then the other knit along that's currently running is the rainbow knit along, and that's running until the 30th of September, and it's a pretty loose set of guidelines. It doesn't have to be a true rainbow. It can be rainbow inspired, rainbow-esque, rainbow. If it thinks it's a rainbow, it can be rainbow, let's put it that way. Basically anything colourful, multicolored yarn, variegated, fun colours. It's supposed to be fun. WIPs are allowed. It started a couple of weeks ago when I mentioned it in the podcast. There was no specific start date, just jump on in. There's been some lovely chatter, some lovely projects already posted in the finished objects thread, and that's running until the 30th of September. I think I already have 4 prizes lined up so far. I'm not going to tell you more about them until I actually have them to show you, but there's a couple of yarn prizes, there's some stitch markers I believe coming, and one of my project bags that I'm making specifically as a prize. So that's it for knit along news. If you do have any questions about the knit along or anything else, feel free to ask in the Ravelry group. Quick little update on the Mina Makes Etsy shop. I don't have any new bags to go into the shop yet. I did spend a good chunk of this last week prepping bags with my mum. She helped me out a lot with a lot of ironing, of interfacing and stuff. That was a real help. I prepped a ridiculous number of bags. They're not all going to be ready to go in. I'm not going to wait until they're all ready to go into the shop, but I'll probably do them in batches, so get a nice variety in there. I'm also not entirely sure when the next update is going to be yet, because of possibly having to go to Dubai at some point towards the end of the month. I may try and get a few bags done this week and do a small update, but I'm not going to put too much pressure on myself because I've had a pretty busy couple of weeks and I just kind of want to take it easy at the moment. But I'm hoping to have an update sometime within the next couple of weeks, even if it's only a small one. And like I said, because if I'm going to Dubai, I don't want to do a big update and then have to close the shop until I'm back while I'm away. So until I have a better idea of what's happening with that, I'll keep you guys in the loop. I'll post on Instagram and I'll post in the group about shop updates. And I'm also experimenting with a few new sizes of bags. I'm trying out a few more of these sort of more rectangular shaped wedges, as well as my square ones. So these are the sort of standard shape I was going for before, the square wedge, and this is a more rectangular wedge. So I have a few. I'm kind of doing both now. I quite like the way the rectangular ones are coming out. I've also come up with a way of making drawstring bags that I like. I used to, I don't hate drawstring bags, I do love them, but I never really liked them when I made them, if that makes sense. I wasn't fully satisfied with how they were turning out, but I'm starting to, I think I've developed a way of making them that I like. So I'll probably be doing up a few more of those, see how those turn out. And yeah, so I will keep you in the loop on that one and let you guys know when there will be another review. I also wanted another update. Sorry, my thought was moving on to the next point, which I wanted to say thank you to Maria of the Stitched in Sweden podcast, who gave such a lovely review of one of my of the bag that I'd sent her for our swap. And I actually sent her one of these ones, and this is what I kept for myself. I really love this fabric as well, and so yeah, I'm really glad it worked out for you and that you've enjoyed it, and that and then I went travelling with you and it travelled all over Ireland and the UK. And yeah, so, and like I said, this fabric's very special to me. It's actually the very first fabric I bought after I got my sewing machine. I think I've mentioned that loads of times before and I won't mention it again. But yes, so it's very special. I'm glad I got to keep one of the bags for myself as well. And there's a couple of sock size bags in that print still available in the shop if anyone is interested. And acquisitions. Don't have much to show you this week. I actually don't have anything for once. After several weeks of having stuff to show you, I have one thing to show you actually, and it's a pattern. And this is Rain on the Window. A really lovely sock pattern by Catherine Nathan, who is Girl with the Rabbit on Instagram and Ravelry. And she gifted me this pattern last week very, very kindly. Thank you so much, Catherine. It was so sweet of you to do that. And I love the texture pattern on this. And definitely one of the socks I'm knitting will be done with this pattern. I really like the sort of the knit pearl texture, which is lovely. And so yeah, so no mail this last week, nothing's come through in the PO box. I am expecting a few things, but some of those things that I'm expecting were only mailed out last week and they're coming from the US, so I'm not expecting them to get here for at least another week or so, if not longer. But there was one package on its way which I was kind of hoping would have arrived by now, but I'm hoping will come this week, because it's already been 2, maybe 3 weeks since it was sent. I'm not too worried it'll get here, it's just sometimes things take longer. Right, moving on to the Q&A section. I actually have some really interesting answers to last week's questions especially about spinning and odd fibres. There was someone who posted in the thread who said that she'd bought 12, I think it was 12 ounces or 12 pounds, I can't remember, 12 something, of fibre off of eBay, and this fibre for spinning was made out of recycled soda bottles and prison jumpsuits. I don't even know how that works. If someone who understands more about spinning and fibre and stuff can explain how you get fibre out of plastic bottles, and prison jumpsuits I can kind of understand because it's clothing and you can, but plastic bottles, how does that work? Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Anyway, she said that she sort of gave up after a while because it was really difficult to work with, and frankly I am so not surprised. That sounds like a really horrible thing to try and spin. How does that, I just can't even understand how, my brain cannot wrap around how that works. Probably because I'm not a spinner and I don't really understand I understand the logic of how the spinning process works. I just, because I've never done it, yeah, baffles my mind. As it turns out, few people have or have known people who have spun with dog hair, usually mixed with wool of some kind to make it easier to spin. Most have said it wasn't necessarily the most pleasant experience, but it's interesting. It's just interesting to me to know. And then there was someone who, I hope she doesn't mind me mentioning her name on the podcast. Her name is Skina4 on Ravelry, and that's Cecilia. She's from Canada. And she noted that Cowichan sweaters made by the people of the Cowichan tribe in the west coast of Canada, and that they have a real history with spinning, and they used to spin with they used to raise wool dogs, like dogs specifically to use their fur to make yarn. And she pointed me in the direction of a documentary on YouTube called The Story of the Coast Salish Knitters. And I watched this the other day and it's so interesting. It is such an interesting documentary. It's about 50 minutes long. It's on YouTube. I'd say it's about 15-20 years old, judging by the video. I'm not entirely sure when it was filmed, but it seems like it's sometime around the 90s. I could be wrong. So don't quote me on that one. So the Cowichan sweaters were made by the people of the Cowichan tribe, who lived on Coast Salish on Vancouver Island, off the coast of British Columbia, in Canada. And it was just so interesting to hear about the history. And they started out as weavers. They weren't knitters originally. They started out as weavers, and back then they would raise dogs for wool, and they would mix the dog fur with, I think it was mountain goats fur or hair from mountain goats that they traded for, and they would make yarn for weaving. And they were really, the number of blankets, like their wealth back then was measured by the number of woven blankets that they had. That was their measure. And then once the European settlers came, that's when knitting was introduced, and they started knitting. And Cowichan sweaters are very special. They're made only with like natural coloured yarn, so greys, browns, blacks, whites, cream sort of colours. And each family sort of has their own sort of pattern. It's almost like a Fair Isle sweater, and in that, you know, you've got different colours and patterns and stuff in the garment, and so each family would have their own sort of patterns, and it's almost like having your own crest, as it were. And the story, it's just so interesting to hear. It was a complete family affair. Like, kids would be involved in collecting wool, in processing wool. Even the boys and the men in the family learnt to knit. It was a proper family affair, and it was a way for these people to earn a living. And a lot of them supported their families up until very recently by knitting sweaters and selling their sweaters. And it's very interesting. I definitely encourage you to go and watch, if you're interested in knitting history and spinning history. There's some really interesting footage of people spinning with different techniques, and generally their spinning was quite thick, chunky yarn for the style that they knit. And it's just so interesting to hear. I mean, there are some sad stories in there of exploitation and all of that, which unfortunately is just the way things happened. Not that it was right, but it's just the way things happened. But things are much better now, and there's a bit more of an appreciation for their craft for those that still do it. And there was my favourite quote in the whole documentary was one woman. She was saying how, you know, she learnt to knit from her grandmother when she was a child, and like when she was little, her grandmother, you know, there was none of that whole sitting down and teaching you how to knit. She said her grandmother used to say, if you wanted to knit, you watch, then you go do it. And I thought that was awesome. That was brilliant. But yeah, so I thought that was really interesting, and thank you so much, Cecilia, for pointing that out to me. I really enjoyed watching it. I will link the documentary in the show notes, and I will link it in the Ravelry group as well. So if you're watching this on the Ravelry thread, there should be a link to the documentary as well, where I'll sort of embed it into the group thread. You should definitely watch it. It's 15 minutes long. It's really interesting. And yeah, if you're interested, like I said, if you're interested in spinning or knitting or anything, sort of fibre history in general, you should watch it. Next up, I have there was a question in the Ravelry thread about, to me, basically asking me about my notions. And she said, basically, I didn't write down the exact question, but what she asked was, she said, we know that you use different project bags for different projects. Do you have notions in each of your bags, or how do you carry your notions for each project and stuff? Well, I don't have separate notions for each project. I kind of just have a central notions thing, carrier, as it were. I'll show you in a second. Separate notions thing, and then I just kind of take that with me with whatever project I'm working on at the time. If I'm going away and going out of the house, or taking a project with me. What I do carry in each of my project bags with my project is usually, well, I'll have the pattern, and I have a pen. I always have the printout of the pattern, unless it's a pattern I know off by heart. I print out the pattern because I like to write on my patterns. I like to make notes, and then I keep all my written patterns. That way, if I ever want to come back and knit the pattern again, or I want to see what changes I've made or whatever, I always go back and check, because I always write all my notes of any changes or anything that I've done on the actual pattern itself. That way it's always there. I keep the whatever the needles were in before. So if they were fixed circulars or something, I will keep the little packet that they were in, and a pen or a pencil or something to write with. And now I keep a little lavender sachet in each of my bags as well. Other than for my Cozy Memories blanket, which I keep one of my little snips to cut ends, or to cut the yarn in general, which I keep in, I usually keep that with my Cozy Memories blanket, so I don't have to remember to carry scissors with me all the time. But other than that, the main thing I carry with me for with my notions in is this. It's actually a little pill box type thing that I picked up from Daiso. I think you guys have Daiso in the US, but I'm not sure where in the US you have it. I'm pretty sure you have it on the West Coast, but I'm not sure. Basically, it's like a Japanese dollar store, pound shop. And we have that here, and that's basically where I got this from. It's a little pill box, and I keep my notions in it. And this is really good for traveling. I keep safety pins in here. Safety pins are always handy, not just for knitting. And I find these are really good. Earlier on when I was knitting socks, I tended to drop stitches and not realise for ages. And it still happens occasionally. So once I found the drop stitch, I just pick it up with the safety pin, lock the safety pin, and then deal with it later. If I don't have the time, or I'm not able to, if I'm not in the right place to sit down, take my time to fix the stitch, just safety pin it, and then the stitch doesn't go anywhere. I have some stoppers and these cable keys for my interchangeables, for my Knit Pro interchangeables. I also have a couple of my larger stitch markers, these ones that Chrissy from Stitch Together gave me. They don't fit in any of the other box sections, so I just have them in this top bit. So that's that top section. Then down here I have different stitch markers. So these are my lockable or removable stitch markers. These are just the plain round ones, and these are just some of my other decorative stitch markers. Like I said, most of my stitch markers are currently on my Rock Island shawl, otherwise this would be have more in there. Then down here I have a variety of darning needles, and this bottom section actually doesn't close properly anymore, but it's not a problem because when the box is closed nothing comes out anyway. So I just have a variety of sizes, thicknesses of tapestry needles for weaving in ends, and that pretty much is what I'll take with me. So if I'm going out and I'm taking one project with me, or even two projects, I just throw this into one of the project bags, and it's nice and concealed. I'm not worried about anything poking my knitting or snagging my knitting. It's just easy, and everything in here has been through and does go through airport security without any issues. I've taken this with me every time I go on a plane. No one's ever had any issues with it. The only other thing I carry with me as well as this when I'm traveling with my knitting, is these. These are my travel scissors, and they fold away. Get this, they're a little bit stiff and don't fold away as smoothly as they used to. So they fold away like that, and the blade is short enough that they're allowed onto pretty much every plane I've been on with these. And yeah, you can open them up. They're not the sharpest scissors, I have to say. They are a little bit annoying in that they're not that great at cutting, but they're fine for when you're on the go and you don't want to carry big old scissors with you, especially if you're traveling on a plane. So that basically constitutes my notions, and this doesn't fit in this box. But I am going to get some more of these boxes so I can have different notions boxes set up, and then I can have one in each project bag, because I have enough notions that I can split them up that way. So I think that's probably what I'll do. I'll get a few more of these boxes, and then I'll have like a little notions kit for each of my projects. At home I have more notions obviously, and I store them in different ways. This is basically just a pencil case that I use for notions, and this, if I'm going on a longer trip, this is the notions case that I will bring with me, and this goes into my checked luggage, so I'm not lugging this around. What I have in here, I have a variety of crochet hooks and like a latch hook thing. This is mostly just for fixing stitches. I don't really crochet. This is just if I need to pick up a stitch or do something. I have one of these chunky stitch holders. I have a little cable needle, which I don't use very often, but it can be handy sometimes. And just a little ruler and a needle gauge. I find this is quite handy actually. I do use this quite a lot. I love this little notebook my mum got me. I'm not lazy, I'm thinking. This is just good for jotting down notes and stuff if you ever need to. I've spoken about my love of these little mint tins. These are really good for winding ends. You just like little scraps after you finish the project. So I just stick the end in here, close the lid so it secures the end, it's not going anywhere, and you just wind it around this and then pop it off, pop it out, and you got a center pull ball of a little scrap, and it's nice and tidy, and it's a lot neater than just the little jumbled up mess of yarn that you end up with, especially if you've pulled from the center of the cake. Little row counter, a variety of pens and pencils, measuring tape, and the last thing that I carry or keep handy anyway are my DPNs. Now I don't use DPNs for the intended purpose of DPNs, which is knitting in the round on small circumferences. I use my DPNs for a variety of other things. I use them to, they help me with my socks a lot actually. What I find the easiest way for me to knit my socks cuff down is I knit the cuffs separately and then I put them onto the same circular needle. So I knit one cuff, then I transfer it onto 2 DPNs just to hold them, knit the next cuff, and then put the first one back onto the needle and then go from there. I find that's the quickest way for me. I find the first 2 or 3 rows after you've cast on for socks cuff down, they're quite fiddly. You don't want your stitches to be too loose, you don't want to twist your stitches, and I find it's just easier and quicker for me to get through that first section and just to get the cuff, the ribbing done quicker if I'm doing them one at a time and then I stick them onto the same needles. It's good for that. It's good if you just need to emergency cable needles. I use them to decrease at the tops of hats. I do find they're really handy to have around, just to hold stitches occasionally, whatever. So I always keep the DPNs handy. And the other thing I've got, I have one of these sort of larger container boxes, which holds pretty much all my other little notion-y bits. I've got some more darning needles and tapestry needles down here, some larger stitch markers that don't fit in the little box, some more ends, lots of ends, some more stitch holders. I have these little sort of pin things that would work either as shawl pins, small shawl pins, or as stitch holders, more cable keys, little connectors, stitch markers and stuff down there. So that stays at home, that doesn't ever go with me anywhere. And that's kind of how I store my notions really. It's nothing particularly fancy. The only thing I'm planning on doing, like I said, is getting some more of these little pill boxes, which I do think are really good actually for notions and stuff. And that's, like I said, that's pretty much how I store my notions. So yeah, it's my question to you guys. How do you store your notions and tools, and knitting tools in general? How do you organize them? Do you have separate things for each of your projects? Do you have separate notions for each that you put with each project, or do you have like a central thing and then like a small little bag that you put whatever you need take with you? How do you store your knitting needles? That would be interesting to hear. I don't really have a system for my knitting needles at the moment. I need one. I need to figure one out, to be honest. So I'd be interested to hear how you store your knitting needles. So yeah, feel free to let me know. Leave me a comment in the chatter thread on Ravelry for this episode. Let me know, how do you store your needles? How do you store your notions? Show me a picture if you have one. And I think that pretty much covers it for this week. We did go and check out the handicraft centre in Bahrain, me and my mum, last week, and I will tell you more about that next time, because this has already gone on for quite long enough. And yeah, so that's that. I'll cover that one next week. weekend review. Weekend review is the last section now. So, like I said, lots of bag prep. We went to the handicraft centre, me and my mum, last week, but I'll talk more about that next time. What else did we do? We went out for dinner a couple of times to an area called Adlia in Bahrain. It's near the eastern side of the country. It's a really sort of popular sort of hangout area. There's lots of little restaurants and really nice places to go for food and like coffee shops and stuff. So we went there a couple of times for dinner and sort of wandered around there for a bit, and it was quite nice. The weather wasn't too bad. It was hot and muggy in the evenings, but it was bearable for a bit. I did catch the Wool Barn update last week. I got a couple of skeins, but I'm going to have to wait until Perry's back in the UK. The package has already arrived at my parents'. Maya is incredibly fast with her shipping, but so that's waiting for me at my parents'. My brother's already told me it's arrived. So when Perry's back in London in August, he's going to bring it back for me. Me and my mum joke now that he's like our private mail delivery service. Just because we were out the other day and my mum couldn't decide if she wanted to get something or not. And I said, look, don't worry, if you go back and you decide you want it, just let me know and I'll send it with Perry. And vice versa, she'll send stuff for me with him. So he's our little private mail delivery service. I've also joked that he's my yarn mule. Whenever he travels, he's just going to bring yarn back for me. But yes, so my mum left yesterday morning. I took her to the airport and she's back home now. And Perry left on Saturday afternoon he left. He had to go to Dubai for a work meeting yesterday. So he left Saturday afternoon because the meeting was quite early on Sunday morning. And then he left last night to go to New York. And he's actually probably still on his plane at the moment. He's in New York this week for the next leg of his course, his MBA course that he's doing. And he won't be back until Monday night next week. So I'm on my own. It was quite sad coming home yesterday and having the whole day at home, just me and the cats just ignored me all day until they wanted to be fed in the evening. They've kind of got this new routine now where they just go and sleep at the top of the stairs on the landing. So we have 2 floors. So we've got the ground floor and the first floor, but then we also have the staircase carries on up another floor technically, but it goes to the roof. It's the roof access. And there's a half landing between the first floor and the roof access level where it's just a landing. The boys love to sleep there during the day because it's actually the hottest part of the house. They love it. They just curl up there and they just nap away all day, and they won't come down again until they're hungry. So they pretty much keep to themselves most of the time at the moment. So I got quite a bit of knitting done yesterday. I started the socks that I showed you yesterday, and I started the handbrake cowl yesterday, and I knit a few rows on my Rock Island shawl. So I think I was just trying to distract myself from the fact that I was on my own. But yeah, I'm hoping to get quite a lot of stuff done this week. I've got some bags I want to work on. I've got some knitting I want to work on. I'm just taking it easy and enjoying the time. Ramadan's coming to an end this week. It's due to finish, I think, either on Friday or Saturday. It's been an interesting Ramadan this year. It's been very different. Well, not very different, but it's been significantly different compared to Ramadans of previous years in Dubai. I found that it's definitely a lot more restrictive here during Ramadan. Not personal restrictions, but it's restrictive in opening hours of places. A lot of places have weirder opening hours than they did in Dubai. In Dubai they had shorter opening hours, or they opened later in the day and were open later in the evening. But over here I found they were open for a small period of time during the day, usually something like being open from 9 or 10 in the morning until about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and then they'll be closed until about 7 or 8 p.m. up until and then they'll be opening again from 7 or 8 p.m. until midnight, which isn't the worst thing. And then food places will open just before iftar, just before sunset, so you can go and order food and whatever. But and the supermarkets are open all day. But we went to the mall the other day, for example. We popped out. We went to see the Tree of Life, and I'll talk a bit more there in a second, but we went to a mall afterwards, and we got there at about 4 o'clock, and all the shops were closed. The supermarket was open, but all the shops were closed. We're like, oh, okay, well, we missed that one then. It's just a little bit of awkwardness like that. In Dubai, pretty much everything was open. Still, restaurants and stuff would be closed if they weren't serving during the day. There would be restaurants and coffee shops that did serve food during the day, but I think they'd either have a special license and they'd have to be concealed, so they can't be visible from the outside. So they'd either put like black tinted stuff on their glass on the windows, or they draw curtains or something, and you could still go in and get a coffee or get some food during the day if you wanted to, for those who weren't fasting, but it was still being respectful, and that from the outside you couldn't see. So there was that. That was a big difference. Not being able to have a coffee in the mornings was quite difficult for me. It's still quite difficult for me. I don't have a coffee every day. I don't go out and buy a coffee every day, but I do like a latte in the morning sometimes. If I'm going out to run errands, it'd be nice. Sometimes I do swing past and pick up a coffee, but not being able to do that has been quite hard for me. And I don't usually fancy a coffee in the afternoon or evenings. I have had coffee a couple of times in the evenings during Ramadan, just because I've really wanted one, but it's just not the same. I really like a coffee in the morning. If I'm going out and running an errand, it's quite nice. Occasionally I just get one as a treat, but I've really felt that this month. And we went to see the Tree of Life with my mum, which is a tree. I think I've talked about it in one of my very early episodes. It's a tree out in the middle of the desert with it's quite a large tree. I can't remember what type of tree it is exactly, but it's called the Tree of Life because it's out in the middle of the desert in southern part of Bahrain, where there's no other life. There's no reason why this tree should be there. No one's entirely sure how it's surviving or where it's getting its water from, because there's nothing else around it for miles that hasn't been like specifically put there by people. This tree just exists on its own, and it's called the Tree of Life for that reason. And we went there. It was quite a windy day, really hot. It was over 40 degrees centigrade, which I think is somewhere around 110 Fahrenheit, I think. It was around 42, 43 degrees centigrade. It was so hot. We were there at around 3:30 in the afternoon, and we stood by the tree. The tree's like on this little hill, and the wind was blowing so hard. It was quite really windy, but it was just like a hairdryer blowing in your face. It was just hot. There was no relief from the heat at all. I did take some footage. I'm not sure how it's turned out yet because I haven't looked at it on the computer, but if it turned out okay and there was something I can share with you, I will insert that here. So hopefully you'll have seen something there. If not, I did put up a little video clip on Instagram, so you can go check that out there. And yeah, so like I said, Ramadan should be ending this week. It's due to be, Eid is due to be on either Friday or Saturday, which is the official end of Ramadan. And in the UAE, Eid was always, Eid is a public holiday. You get 2 or 3 days off work depending what day it falls on. If it falls on the weekend, you usually get a couple of days into the week as well. In Saudi Arabia, we always knew this before as well, in Saudi Arabia they usually get much more time off for the Eid holidays, and Perry's work announced that they're going to be off. They're going to be closed for business from Thursday of this week until following Thursday, so they get 6 working days off. And well, Perry's not going to be back until Monday evening anyway, but we have the rest of the week when he's going to be at home, and it's going to be really nice because it's just going to be the 2 of us, and we're going to be able to get on with stuff. And there's so many things that we've wanted to do and just not had the time to do. And my mum said, oh, it'd be really nice, you can go away for a few days. And we could have, and we had talked about potentially doing that for Eid, going away for a few days. But I can't travel at the moment because my passport is currently with someone who's organising my Bahrain visa, finally. But that won't be finalised until after Ramadan is finished and Eid is over. So it won't be for another couple of weeks yet. Which is also why I'm not entirely sure when I'll be going to Dubai yet, if I even will go to Dubai, because it just depends when I get my passport back. If I get my passport back in time to go, I will, and if I don't, because there's a deadline for something that I'm going back for. I don't have to go back necessarily, but I think it would be good if I could, but it just all depends really. Just good. I'm just looking forward to next week, having Perry back. We'll just get some quality time together at home when we can get on with stuff. We've got a whole bunch of photos and picture frames and stuff from when we moved that we haven't even put up yet. We'll be able to get around to doing that, I hope, and just spend some time together after he's been away for a while. So it'd be nice to just relax, I think, and get on with some sewing, get on with some knitting, and just hang out really. So that's it for this week. Thank you so much. I feel like I was rambling quite a bit there towards the end, but thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions or suggestions for me, please feel free to leave a comment in the questions and suggestions thread in the Ravelry group. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you to each and every one of you who get in touch and leave comments every week. I love talking to you guys. It's a great community, and I'm really happy to be able to be a part of it. And I hope to see you all next week. Have a lovely week, and take care. Bye.